But yeah, I would say that we are, at least on the remote work side of things, we're starting to get used to it a little bit more. So
Yeah.
I don't know
Okay,
about
so
Vandri.
sorry guys, because we are already live in
Okay.
YouTube, so I will open the session right now. Okay, thank you so much for our panelists and also our attendees that already came to the fifth webinar of Ordinary People Achieving Impact. And in this session, at last we have the three bench of good speaker, because in the last four we always only get two speakers, and we are now have three full pack of discussion regarding how the problems in local area can be things that be solved by us. And heads up to our lovely moderator, Mr. Irshad, that already joined us to become the moderator for this sessions. And we already have three delightful speakers. First of all, we have Pawani. Can you say your name and also what you do little bits?
Yes.
Before.
Hi, guys. I am Pavni Khandelwal. I am from India. And I am the CEO of a social venture called Atmanirbhar, where we're working on women's mobility issues by training them, especially in two-wheeler mobility, and also helping them get employed in the two-wheeler mobility sector in terms of food delivery personnel, two-wheeler taxi riders, and jobs like that. I also actively work with women entrepreneurs and the youth in my hometown, because my hometown's been really close to me since always, and I always wanted to come back here and do something. So yeah, that's what I'm majorly working on.
Okay, great. So next up we have Virapul from Thailand. Maybe you can also explain what you do in Thailand.
Sure. So, good to see you guys. My name is Virapon. You can just call me V. I'm the founder of Advisory from Thailand. So basically, we provide a career counseling platform for free for Thai students, and also we do consultancy for the Ministry of Education, and also support like universities and schools in developing their strategies and like reform their curriculums. So this is like the brief of my organization.
Okay, great. And the last one we have Rahel from Malaysia. Maybe you can also share.
Sure.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I am leading the design and innovation team within Epic Communities. We are actually a community developer that looks at developing spaces from grassroots level, so getting communities involved and ensuring that projects are long-term, sustainable, and resilient.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. So, okay, let's start the discussion. I will give the time for our moderator, Irshad, to begin this OPAI webinar.
Thanks so much, Vandri. So, hi guys. Thanks again for joining us for this webinar and for making the time to actually come in and share some of your thoughts with regards to the topic at hand. So before we start, right, maybe it will be useful for you guys as well as new viewers of this webinar series to give a little bit of context as to how this came about in the first place and what's the purpose of us doing this. We do this once every 2 weeks, and we're actually in our fifth session. So just to give you a little bit of background, myself, Vandri, and one of our other team members, Daniel, we met in China back in 2019. I say back in 2019 because it really feels a long time ago at this point. So there was one very interesting thought that was up for discussion, and this, to give a bit more context, like this was actually a gathering of social entrepreneurs. And Daniel actually came up with the key question as to, okay, so social entrepreneurs are making an impact, but what about everyone? What about everyone else? Like, what is their capacity to make an impact, and what are ways that, as ordinary people, we might be able to contribute something to society, and like how does that kind of take place? So fast forward a year, what we decided to do was actually to come together to talk to social entrepreneurs about their interactions with ordinary people every day, and to highlight some of the things associated with how not just their benefactors but also other key stakeholders actually play an active part in making sure that impact is driven as well. So we've explored a few different topics ranging from embracing uniqueness, diversity, to finding different roles within the social change ecosystem. And today's topic will be on unearthing local wisdom as well as local issues within different communities. And one of the reasons why you guys are here today is because each one of you actually brings along, I would say, very, very different perspectives on the different types of people that you interface with, but also like the kind of insights, wisdom, and issues that you would uncover as you go along within your own impact journeys. So just wanted to give you that bit of context. And at the end of all these webinar sessions, the idea is for us to actually publish a toolkit for ordinary people who are actually looking to create an impact. So whatever we'll be discussing today will actually form the foundation of the toolkit that we'll be creating. So yeah, just wanted to open up with that. So with that being said, I want to open up with the first question. So how about we go alphabetically for this first question, and then we'll see how things go from there. Yeah, like just to kind of make sure that no one is like, who's gonna answer first? So Pawani, you'll go first. Rachel, you go second. We will go third. And I wanted to open up by actually digging a little bit more into your previous experiences. So you guys have given basically the high level brief of what each of your organizations does. So let's kind of kick it off by having you guys share one or two highlights of your impact journey so far. So it can kind of be what the genesis story of your organization is, or where you started to come into the picture and when you realized that this is actually the journey that you want to walk. So any part of your impact journey that you want to highlight to the audience, like go ahead, like this is your time to basically share a little bit more about the journey so far.
Okay, so I guess I'm supposed to go first. My first ever experience in terms of doing anything that was related to impact started when I was 13 years old. We were having a school summer vacation, and I used to bicycle to my farmhouse every day, and that is when I saw a lot of kids who came from a very marginal background, and they were not, they had basically no access to education, and decided that if there's something, the least that I could probably do is, get all of those kids together and start teaching them. And then we continued to do it throughout my school along with more friends. However, after that, I never really thought that I would ever come back to my own city. I would ever come back to Mathura, where I am from, which is actually a tier 3 city in India, because I was studying in a tier 1 city, and I was doing academically well, professionally well. So I never really thought that I would come back. And I think somewhere the issue that we have today, right, unearthing local wisdom and local issues, that is what, listening to that is actually what led me to come back to my hometown and do what I'm doing today. Because my mother really wanted to learn how to ride a scooter. Okay, so that's a automatic two-wheeler scooter, and she did not know how to ride a bicycle. And she was behind our lives, because she was like, I want to learn how to ride a scooter because I want to be able to do things on my own. You are not here in this town, brother's not here, dad's always busy, and if I have to do anything, I am just completely handicapped. And we it was very difficult for us, India being a patriarchal society, it was very difficult for us to find her a female trainer, like a female who could professionally teach her, because she did not know how to balance. She knew nothing, and she was 40 plus at that point of time. So it was very difficult. And then finally, when we did find her a trainer, I realized that in my entire community where I used to live, there was at least one woman in every household who also wanted to learn how to ride a scooter. So that is actually what led me to start my current company. So starting from this issue that was faced by my mom, and then realizing how women in my community were also facing that issue, to now scaling up to 7 different cities and training more than 5,000 women and employing around 100 trainers. Uh, Listening to people around you, most importantly, like, the closest ones, has what led me to this journey. And in this duration, um, when I was working with women, I would also, being an entrepreneur, I would also end up interacting with a lot of other entrepreneurs, females, who would be facing a lot many more issues than I have, because I've had a certain access to education and a certain exposure, and these women didn't. So they would all often come to me and ask me, how do we do this? How do we do that? And that is when we realized that this is another challenge that needed to be solved, or that needed to be kind of filled in the entrepreneurship community, on women's entrepreneurs community. And which is when we started another non-profit segment of what we do, which is a community only for women entrepreneurs in my hometown, where we're working with around 100 women entrepreneurs here. And on a weekly, monthly basis, we conduct workshops with them, we do their mentoring sessions, we do their counseling. And all of these women have had a significant growth in regards with whatever businesses they were doing since we started this organization. um, I think one of my most uh, like one significant incident that has happened in this journey, which is again very relevant to today's issue, is one challenge that I faced in the beginning, right? Uh, being So all of my trainers, women who train, or who work with us in training, they all used to come from a marginal background, and they would not talk to me, right? Like, they would always think of me as, she is the madam and she is the boss and she speaks in English. So they wouldn't I would call them whenever they would come to office, and I would try to ask them, how did it go, what are the challenges, all of that. They just wouldn't talk to me. They would go and tell the same issues to another one of my employees who they could relate more with, and then that employee would come and tell me that this is what they're facing. And then when I would ask them that, is this the actual challenge that you guys are facing, talk to me about, they were like, no, 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 nothing like that, we didn't say anything like this. And not like I was going to eat anybody up, but it was simply, I think, the difference that they felt in terms of backgrounds. And today, I'm very happy to say this today, that now whoever 100 women we work with, if they have any issue that they feel their immediate manager will not be able to solve, they call me up even if it is 1 a.m., and they don't hesitate. And this has been possible because at I have literally gone out of my way to spend time with them, to spend time with them in places, in timings, in languages that they would be comfortable with. So I was not so good with the language that they would talk in, but I made sure that I was not using English words while I'm speaking to them. Whenever I meet them, I might actually go and stay with them at their house, or I will self invite myself over to their places to eat. So those little changes that I made to my lifestyle around them have really helped me mix up with them and understand their issues, and which is what has then um, shown the real impact that we've created. So this is one most significant things, I think, that has happened in my journey.
So that's fascinating. So as a result of you operating within that space, like a couple of things kind of popped up. So the first is that in addition to you empowering women through being able to ride two-wheel scooters, like you've also, through the process of interacting, actually unearthed I would say like a need for women entrepreneurs to actually have a community to be empowered in that way. So I'll dig into that later on. That's going to be quite fascinating. And then the second thing is that it does take a significant amount of time as well as effort in order for you to be relatable,
Right.
in order for these issues to come up. And I think one thing that I will dig into a little bit more is how has that interaction allow you to uncover other pieces of local wisdom, but we'll get into that later. But before, moving on first, like we'll go to Rachel. So are there any highlights of your own impact of journey, your journey of impact? My goodness, my English has flown out the window. Yeah, are there any highlights of your journey of impact that you want to share?
I think what I will share is the beginning of my journey and discovery. Because in Malaysia, I kind of grew up a very typical middle class family where we were kind of nudged into a certain field that we don't really know whether we wanted to go into, but our parents say, you know, go and be an architect. So you kind of go and be an architect, you know. So so that was the path I went to. I enjoyed both science and arts. And so my mom was like, hey, why don't you go and be an architect? So I was like, okay, sure, why not? There's no reason why I shouldn't. So then I signed up to my architecture journey. I reached till my master's. Only then I started, this 4 years into my architecture journey, only then I started to reflect on what I was actually doing. So for the first 4 years, I was just following suit to whatever that people were saying. So only in my fourth year, I started realizing that the field that I was in was actually a field that was very, very flawed. In a sense, I mean, not to criticize the architects out there, but in a sense where the method, the process of designing, the materials we're using, a lot of it, and also the customers we were serving were a lot of the time people who can afford architects, people who can afford a certain way of living and a certain lifestyle. And that got me really into deep thinking on what was my purpose as an architect. I think from then on, I started digging even deeper on what is the function of an architect or a developer or even an engineer in the building industry. Like, what is our purpose actually? Is our purpose to be building more buildings for people who can afford it? And these are people who are of the 20% in terms of global population. Most likely about 20% are able to afford an architect and engineer a proper, you know, constructed house. But what happens to the other 80% was the big question mark that I was struggling with. Is if I go into architecture and I go into development or construction, will I be only serving the 20%? And I started to explore alternative ways of where my field could lead me to, and also finding ways where other people could join me on the journey as well. And that's when I stumbled upon Epic Homes. So Epic Homes is something started by Johnson, Jane, and also John Ming. So they started Epic Homes as an effort to provide safe housing for the indigenous community in Malaysia. And the way they designed it is in a way where anyone can join. So any public can join in to build, because the structure and all was designed in a way where it was modular and hence accessible even for the indigenous people themselves to join in on the build. So, so from then on, I was really inspired to continue on this journey of discovery. I would say discovery because I'm still discovering. To where I am at the moment with Epic Communities and doing what we call community development. Why we don't call ourselves a developer, but we call ourselves a community developer is because the way a development happens, at least from my knowledge in Malaysia, is usually there's a private land, a developer owns it, and they will develop it into a condo, into a house, terrace housing, etc. And there is very little accessibility for the neighbors or the community on ground to actually get involved with the development and to actually inform the direction of the development. And that leads to actually a lot of kind of white elephant projects where developers follow suit other successful developers. Oh, a shopping mall makes sense, so let's build more shopping malls. But they never actually go go down on ground. The only thing that happens on ground is they will put up a board and say, okay, we have a town hall. If you object, come and join us. But there weren't other means that would actually get connected to people who are actually on ground, who don't have access to all these town hall information, meeting minutes, all these very bureaucratic things that even me living in this community, I don't even know what is the procedure. So what more other people who have less access to technology, right? So I think that's was kind of my journey into getting into this community development model, and kind of questioning the way development is happening in the communities around us, and how we can actually improve and create more successful environments for the communities that we live within. Yeah, so that's kind of my journey to where I am at the moment.
That's fascinating. So like there are two like broad themes that I gleaned from that. So the first one is that you kind of started your journey of impact because of the core question of like a very specialized set of skills that's very necessary to be applied to what you call the 80% not being readily accessible, and you wanted to find a way to actually be able to apply that. And through the process of doing that, you've actually managed to a large degree, like find a model that unlocks both local issues as well as local wisdom through the participatory approach that you do to community development. Okay, yeah. So I do want to dig into the community development aspect as well as to get into the nitty-gritty details of how like that participation actually happens. Before we get into that, so I think for you, like I do want to get to know a little, if you don't mind sharing, like I do want to get to know a little bit about how you found yourself in the education space as well, and like whatever else you want to share about your own journey of impact, like I'll be curious to know. But I am curious about how you got into education.
Yeah, sure. So talking about my impact journey, I think I'm gonna share about like the beginning of my impact journey. So prior to starting my company, the advisory, it was early in 2018, so about 2 years ago. At that time, I was a business consultant working on a human resource area. And by that time, I was thinking about like, why do I have to like support and help organizations, just one organization impact? So with that question, I try to look at the value chain and step back from the working environment to the education sector. So I try to provide and transform education so that we have a better workforce in the system. So at that time, I decided to quit my company and started advice. And I would say that in the broader picture, 2018, it was about the research. So I started by developing a research about like what should the curriculum in Thailand be in order to have like a good student and they can like get to the workforce like properly. And in 2019, I developed further from the research that my company did, and we the technology to support the student. And this year, 2020, I think the focus of my impact journey is about the partnership. So we started from having a research, then we developed a technology to enable the students anywhere and anytime to access to information, to access to data and in the tools for them to discover themselves in the career counseling journey. And this year, we try to scale up our impact through the partnership. So we partner with the Ministry of Education and also like the private sector to ensuring that we can provide a good student connecting education to the employment sector. So this is like the overall story of how we started advisory.
Nice. Okay, so you were cut off a little bit during that, but some of the key points that I gleaned from your introduction was that you were basically doing business consulting for quite a while, and you were wondering whether it was possible to actually move up the value chain a little bit, go upstream and be able to impact people while they were still in their formative phases in order to be more, I would say, like productive members of society, and in the process, like be able to give them like a better livelihood in essence. So the way that you kind of went about it was conducting research on how the curriculum is. You through that developed a bunch of technology that plugged some of those gaps and also provided data information to help students discover their careers a little bit better. And now you're in a stage where you're not just working directly with students, but you're also working with different stakeholders to kind of bring like value to the students in the end. So
yeah, exactly.
So I think what's interesting, like across the board, is that there's a very common theme of like everyone was kind of on a journey to actually I don't know, like be successful in the big city, like really go into like a very I would say lucrative career within architecture as well as like business consultancy, and everyone kind of found some sort of a gap as a result of your day to day what's the word for it? Your day to day experiences, and as a result, like you guys have gone into your own individual impact journeys. So thanks so much for taking the time to share with us some of your highlights. So before we dig a little bit more into your own experiences, I do want to shift the conversation a little bit more to the philosophical side of what you feel like creating impact kind of means. So when I think in your different contexts, like you all deal with like different types of ordinary people, and I use the quotation marks over here because in some essence, like everyone does have that capacity to be able to create an impact. And I was wondering whether, and like feel free, whoever wants to answer first, like go ahead and answer first. But I was wondering whether any of you have a like philosophy on whether you have core principles or beliefs about ordinary people actually creating an impact within the different contexts of your work. So for example, Rachel, like when you work with indigenous communities, when they actually come in for that participatory process, like where, at which points do they actually come in to create impact, to actually create something that is good for the larger communities, something like that. When you're working with your students or even the educators, like where do they sort of come in to add value to the piece of technology that you're doing? How does that self-reinforcing loop kind of like become a virtuous cycle? And for Pawani, when you're actually dealing with women entrepreneurs, like where are some pieces of wisdom that like even as someone coming in to bring resources to them, bring community to them, what are some things that you've uncovered about people actually creating impact as a result of being part of that community? So just wanted to like put the open question, like if like I just suggested some prompts, but if you do want to go in a different direction, we'll be happy to hear some of your thoughts as well. I know it's a pretty heavy question, so whoever is ready to kind of jump in, like just go ahead.
So maybe it can be like a dynamic conversation. So
Sure.
maybe I'll start first. So
Yeah.
I think that my philosophy is to have a principle in working. By principle, I mean that we have to have some guidelines or some ways of thinking and doing things. So when I start my company, I have some basic principles of, for example, like empowering and trust. So whenever I make decision or whenever I do things, I always look against this principle, against my principle. And I think that when you have the principle, you will work consistently. So when you make decision, it will become like consistent. And whenever you communicate your decision, it will also become consistent. And also when you work outside your organizations, for example, when I work with the Ministry of Education, I also encourage them to have the principle in in reforming the national curriculum, because at the national level, you will have to deal with a lot of stakeholders and a lot of experts, I would say. So you will have a lot of opinions, but if you don't have a principle to manage and to navigate to the conclusion, you might get lost. So I think that one of my philosophy is to have a principle in uh, making decision and in working. So maybe that's my start.
Understand. Sorry, you kind of cut off a little bit, but what I understood from that is that uh, I think the way that you've interpreted the question is more from the perspective of when different ordinary stakeholders actually come together when, for example, you're talking about the ministry. I do think that this also extends to people within the private sector. Like, for all intents and purposes, these are all people playing their individual roles in all these larger organizations. And the one thing that actually unlocks the ability for people to create impact in this particular case is to have key guiding principles in order to solve a particular problem. Like, would you be able to share some of those principles and maybe a couple of the projects that you work with?
You mean the principle?
Yeah.
For example, about empowering. So in average, the average age in my company is around like 24 to 26, I would say. So we hire a lot of like young people, because of we believe that the youth can have like the vision for the future, and also they have like the power, the momentum to create changes. And also we not like do a top-down command like steer things. Like we try to empower our team to design and to make decision and to get involved in many processes in the company. So as well as outside the company, by empowering people, we mean that we're not trying to control the people, but we try to provide spaces, allow them to collaborate and allow them to co-create things together, something like that. So this is some of the principles that we use.
And I think that's fascinating because like a lot of people kind of talk about empowerment, like we kind of use it as a buzzword a little bit loosely. And the way that you kind of applied it within your organization is, yes, we have young people that are looking for work. Yes, we have things that they can do and they can do well. And you give them, through that process of not having a top-down management structure, you give them the trust and the ability for them to actually unlock their own wisdom and be able to make the project a success to a large degree. So that's fascinating. The fact that like you've taken that empowerment piece and applied it within your company, and like in that process, basically like you were able to unlock quite a bit. That's cool. So Rachel, Pawani, like either of you want to kind of chime in on the different things that you guys have done?
Sure. I can go next.
Sure.
If I were to share my principles, especially in regards with the women that I work with, I think one of my core principles is letting them share their stories uninterrupted. One of the major, I think, my major observations that has been in regarding with ordinary people is that more often than not, there's no platform where we can actually share their stories without being interrupted and told another story of the listener. So one, we really make a lot of space in all the work that we do to let these women share their stories, even if they have to go on for half an hour, 1 hour. But if they're going to share their stories, we're all going to listen. And and the other very important thing is, I don't know if you've noticed, but whenever you have somebody to fall back onto, you can take more risks. And for most of the women that we work with, there's nobody to fall back to. There's nobody that who would uh, give put in so much confidence in them. So I am who I am because my parents made me the confident person that I am today. And that confidence was as a result of, no matter what happens, you can always come back to us and start from scratch, you know, and you can make all the mistakes that you want. But unfortunately, you don't have that person who you can fall back to. Not everybody has that person. So I try to be that person for all the people that I work with. So I'll give them all the authority to make decisions, to take risks. But in the end, if anything goes wrong, I make sure that I am the go-to. I can be the go-to person. These two things, and this is not how I always was. It was very difficult for me to let go of responsibility, to let go of the constant OCD of having things go my way, right? Because you want things to happen in a particular way. And So it was really difficult because I wanted things to be my way, and then I realized, no, I need to let everybody do things how they want to do it, and I need to be the go-to person in case things go wrong. And also, I was not a good listener at all. Like, I think I still suck at listening a lot of times. Uh, so having to keep myself and the other people also in the team in check and be like, no, this is not the time to speak. This is the time to listen, and just let. And when you're listening, you don't even have to correct them. You just like have to let them share whatever is coming naturally to them. So yeah, these have been my two principles in making sure that my team is achieving the maximum that they can, and it's worked until now.
Interesting. So I like my literal follow-up question to when you were talking about providing people with a safety net was like, how do you actually do that? And then when you kind of talked about how you were the person who took the fall if anything went wrong, like that kind of blew my mind as to like that possibility like didn't come to mind at all when you kind of talked about it as a safety net. So that was really, really cool. I do want to dig a little bit into the first point that you shared about how you created a space where like one of the key principles was allowing people to share without them being interrupted. Like, where did that come about? What actually was the like that key point where you realized that was something that needed to happen? And what was some like, do you have any specific examples of positive things that have actually come to light as a result of that key principles being applied?
Right. So I'll give you an example of the women entrepreneurs that we work with, right? And when we started working with them, we would kind of create a very high atmosphere and tell them, why don't you come forward, share your story? And they'd be like, no, 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 we don't. And then nobody would share their story. And then we started doing sort of roundtable discussions. And then everybody would start talking and then they wouldn't stop. Uh, and during those roundtable discussions, I noticed that our team would actually end up interrupting a lot. Like when they were finally speaking in a open, casual atmosphere, that is when our team would actually interrupt them a lot. So then we all like took a step back and we said that maybe setting up a stage and a mic and telling them to come and share your story is not the way to go about it. And when we're having these discussions, maybe that is the time to stay shut and let them talk and not try to coordinate things. And now, 1.5 year down the line of since we started doing this, what we've noticed is that these women entrepreneurs have actually gone ahead to pitch in multiple competitions, to multiple programs where they have taken the stage and told their stories. They have been invited to a lot of women entrepreneurs platforms to share their stories, and now they have the confidence to do that. So again, like it was, you can't really expect somebody to on the day one to come to the stage and take the mic and start speaking. What you need to make sure is that when they start speaking, no matter what that environment is, whether they were supposed to speak at that time, how much at that point you stay shut. And from there it has built on to now finally at a point where they can reclaim the stage and say that I want to share my story. So this is the impact that I have seen working with these women.
Oh, that's fascinating. And what I gleaned from that was that it really is the context in which, okay, not so much the context, but like the setting in which you like shifting from that like mic in front of a stage sort of setting to an open table, allow people to talk, don't guide the
Exactly.
conversation too much. And as a result of that repeated process, I'll go as far as to say, and this is not me trying to force the topic at all, but like this is what I truly believe, like that local wisdom is actually unlocked, and eventually it kind of is given the ability to scale up because of that initial setting that you provided, where yes, as a result of them not being interrupted and them taking a long time to speak, like the specific points may not have been as refined. The specific things that they talked about like could maybe use a little bit more work, but as a result of them having that space to talk and refine their thoughts further, like it eventually got them to a point where they were confident enough to go for these pitching competitions, to actually go for big meetings. And damn, okay, that's
And also what you can always do is, it is good to have a lot of follow-up questions, but probably do it one-to-one with them.
mm,
So once you're out of that space, here is something you said and I want to understand more about this in particular. So
interesting.
then it opens up room for more conversation rather than one person trying to intimidate them in front of everybody.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't know if I think Virapul and Rachel work with a very different set of audience probably, so I don't know how much we're able to relate. But there's a lot of cross learning happening for sure, at least for me.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And like that's something that I think, quite frankly, the whole concept of being able to create spaces where people are comfortable enough to actually step out is something that I've learned from your sharing. So thanks so much for doing that. And speaking of like the other two speakers, so Rachel, like do you want to talk a little bit more about I guess what do you kind of want to share a little bit more about like your own experiences?
Yeah, I think going back to what you all were talking about in terms of principles, I guess one or two of the principles that we really, really hold dear, or I really hold dear with everything that I do, and we do as Epic communities, is that every voice matters, no matter how big, how small it seems. And we have to find ways to make that voice heard, or to find ways to kind of reach out so that these smaller voices can be heard. So that's one principle. But the other one also is that one size doesn't fit all. With every different community, with every different person that we go and approach and talk to, with every different client or community that we engage with, there are different ways to work around it. And so even though we try in Epic, we try to standardize some things, there are some things that just cannot be standardized, and some things that really we have to design to fit, design certain things to fit different communities. And so like what Pawani was talking about, how sometimes you speak one-to-one, sometimes you sit in a round table, and there are different engagement tools that we have for different outcomes or different groups of people that we hope to discuss. Just sharing one example from a friend of mine. She went into one of the Orang Asli villages, and one thing that we noticed is that at the front was all the men, at the back was all the women. So that's how usually when we go into town halls, that's what happens. But what eventually we come to learn is that we need to, even though they're separated, we need to make sure that we have representatives there within the women group to actually facilitate discussions and to actually get the voices heard and to get information from the women as well. So then at least the decision-making process is more flattened and not so much hierarchical. So that's one of it. And another one where, like you were saying, local wisdom really matters, because we are actually coming in as outsiders. We are coming in as people who are not within the community and did not grow up within the community. So we fully rely on what the local people have to say, whether it's in the urban context or the rural context. We ensure that we go in first without bias, And we have to make sure that our community engagement is done without biasness as well. And so we actually train volunteers, like ordinary people, we train them, and we ensure that the skill set of them going out there into communities to talk to people, that they're equipped enough to actually be facilitators instead of telling people or asking very straightforward questions. So there is actually a skill set that is very difficult to learn, and it takes a lot of time. And I think none of us are good at. I wouldn't say any of us will be professionals at it actually, because it's really complex. But we try our best to put that as an aim, that when we go into communities, there are certain skill sets that we bring along, and we ensure that the conversation is not one-sided, that we are all facilitators.
So maybe to dig into that a little bit, so I understand that you went as far as to say that like none of you are professionals at it. I'm a bit doubtful about that, because like I think compared to a lot of other people, like you guys basically have done it a lot more, and that's about as professional as and okay. But having said that, like even if you're not fully professional at being able to go in without bias, are there certain things that you apply in order to make sure that like bias is at the very least like minimized? Like what are some things that I would say like let's say the ordinary people that you bring in order to help out with building the community? Like what are certain things that you tell them in order to help remove bias from the process and make it a little bit smoother?
I think there are a couple of things that we make sure are on the checklist that they are aware of. One is, within a group context, if you're talking and someone is overpowering, we make sure to distribute the attention. So one of the skills is to actually divert attention so that the quieter voices also get heard and not just the loud voices. Another thing also we try to drill into our facilitators is that they will never know what new information they will get if they don't try. Because sometimes you're like, oh, I think I have enough. I think I have already enough information or data. Don't need lah. I'll just leave it. But actually, or you think that, oh, the kid doesn't know much. The kid wouldn't know a lot of information, but the kid may actually know, information that none of the adults have thought of, because the kids go out and explore and discover different things. So one of the things the facilitators are taught also is to ensure that they don't close off any persons that within the community, and to be very observant of what's happening within the dynamics of a group. Yeah, and to take social cues as well. So sometimes if they ask very close-ended questions, very yes/no answer kind of questions, obviously the opposing side would just say no or yes all the time, but they wouldn't actually express their feelings, or wouldn't express what they actually are going through. So they are also taught to ask open-ended questions, where the person being the person that they are conversing with would actually open up a little bit more. If not, at least it doesn't just end at a yes or no lah. At least you actually get more information and know how the person is feeling as well.
So those are that was super helpful, because like those are very tactical and actionable things that people, like even on a day-to-day life when you're interacting with someone else, can actually unlock conversations a lot better, can actually make people a little bit more comfortable, and to actually ease things within a group setting. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Pawani, I saw that you kind of unmuted. I was wondering whether you wanted to add on something.
I did actually wanted to add something. Because I've realized that it can be, as a change maker or as a social entrepreneur, it can be very overwhelming to listen to people's stories, right? Because there's so much that comes from it, and then you want to do everything about it. You feel very overwhelmed. There are 1,000.
Did we lose her?
Oh, I
Is the
think
connection okay?
Pawani, can you hear us? It seems like you might have frozen up a
Having
bit.
some problems,
Hello.
guys.
Yes,
Oh,
can
yeah,
you hear me
you're back.
again? Okay.
Yeah, you're back. You're back. Sorry,
So
you got cut off for a little bit.
I know my electricity is just like power went. So anyway, so I was saying it is very easy to get overwhelmed. And that is something I realized, especially during the lockdown when COVID happened, because we were doing a lot of relief work in the initial couple of months. And then people would just call for all kind of aids. And at the end, I would realize that I was so overwhelmed and I was so drained out of energy and so much emotionally impacted. So I think it is very important that whenever you decide to get into a conversation with somebody, um, beforehand that what is it that you are trying to get out of that conversation. So even though you can keep it open minded, once that conversation is over, it is important to see what you resonate with in the conversation. Because if you try to resonate with everything from that conversation, you won't really be able to do anything about it at all. And sometimes it's more important to be able to solve that one thing that you resonate with rather than trying to do something about everything and then not ending up doing anything at all. So having a idea of what is it that you believe in, and by the end of the conversation actually seeing that what in that conversation resonates with your belief is, I think, a very, and you need to do this very consciously, because when you are in the conversation it is going to flow naturally, but this is something that you need to do very, very consciously.
So what I'm hearing is that on the one hand, I think in the earlier part of what you shared as well as what Rachel shared, there is a need to be able to create safe spaces to be able to facilitate conversations. So like a lot of these issues can be can come to light. People will be able to engage in a way where like there's diversity in terms of like uh, I guess like everyone kind of has an equal say of sorts, but at the same time, like as an individual, like while there is an importance in playing a role of a facilitator in order to enable all of that, there's also the need to kind of take a step back sometimes to really identify not just what you believe in, like, but also perhaps what you have the capacity to be able to do something about as well. All right. So before we continue on with the final few questions, I just wanted to give a shout out to the attendees for this conversation. If you do at any point have any questions that you want to ask, Zoom is wonderful in terms of its Q&A feature set. You can ask an anonymous question, or you can ask a question that has your name attached to it. So if you do want me to get to that, just type in the question at any time. But if there's nothing yet, like I do have a few other questions that actually moves a little bit away from like the tactical as well as like the specific things that you guys do. And I do want to get a little bit more of a big picture view of like what your views are, I would say. And this is something that we do across every single every single session. So the questions that we've asked so far are things that are specific to today's topic. Now we're going on to a little bit more general stuff, I would say. And I wanted to open this general segment by asking, I think, a very personal question to you guys. Like, there's really no right or wrong answer for this. But do you guys actually feel that people around, like the ordinary people that you interact with, are inherently looking to create an impact? And why or why not? Yeah. So it's super subjective. I understand that, like, it's not okay. It's definitely not easy to come up with like a one-size-fits-all answer, and that's not the purpose of the question. But I just wanted to kind of use this question to bridge between the very specific tactical things that you're talking about, as well as like what are some things that you feel within your heart when you interact with some of these people, and how, whether or not, like, if they do intend to, if they do have that inherent like desire to create an impact, like how can you tell? And if not, like how can you tell as well? But yeah, so just wanted to hear from any of you guys. So I'll, with regards to the target audience, really up to you to define. Yep.
Yeah. I will go first. I think this is a very like tricky question. I think it's not like a 0 or 1 answer. So in my opinion, I would say that ordinary people tend to contribute positive impact to the society. But I would say that it depends on the priorities and the circumstances that they are facing. So for example, I would say that my colleagues in my office, they are trying to do their best to make positive changes. And also a lot of people that I meet like every single day, I think they are trying to contribute to the society. For example, you can imagine that during this COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people trying to contribute like by staying at home, by wearing masks, and by like having some physical distances from each other. I think they are trying to contribute. But for some people, I think that the priorities or the constraints that they are facing may shift their priorities to survive and something like that. So I would say that like in a larger community, when I meet like strangers, for example, when I go out to a conference and I meet new people, they're trying to like support each other, I would say, and they are trying to like I see a lot of people using like the bottles instead of the plastic cup, and they are also I would say that they are trying to see if how they can help each other. Like when talking about like sustainability, I see a lot of like more of youth people trying to engage in this dialogue and trying to see how they can find some ways to contribute. So I think in overall, ordinary people, as you mentioned, tend to contribute positive impact to the changes, but it might depend on the priorities or like the constraint that they are facing. Yeah.
Understand. So because you were cut off a little bit, like maybe to summarize a little bit, what you are kind of sensing as well as like some qualitative data, I would say, that you're kind of seeing as you interact with a lot of people is that generally people are inclined to do their best to contribute to society and contribute to different causes. It's just a matter of like the priorities and circumstances of both the individual as well as society that dictates how that driving actually materializes is what your main interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rachel, Pawani, anyone wants to give it a go?
I think I can add a little bit because within Epic we actually do a lot of volunteer recruitment. We do a lot of upskilling for ordinary people, as this talk is about, and we actually see a it's very encouraging to see that actually a lot of people want to do good. The unfortunate thing is that they maybe don't have so much access to know where to start. They don't know where they can contribute towards and how they can get involved. So I think within Epic, we actually see a lot of people who are like, oh, finally there's a platform to contribute. At the same time, because of creating this network of volunteers, we are then able to also network a lot with other organizations, NGOs, other impact partners, where we can kind of target a wider group of people with different interests. So, okay, Epic Homes maybe, or Epic Communities may be very development based, but maybe there are volunteers out there or people, ordinary people out there who are more interested in education, who are more interested in policy change, things like that. And we are able to kind of widen that net of people. And I would also agree with what we were saying about people's capacity. So we all believe inherently people want to do good. It's just that because of circumstances, whether it is to feed their family the next day, or people who are going through other crises within their areas, they are just not able to contribute the way the world categorized as like volunteering, right? But they are contributing to their family by going out there to work, to feed the family, going out there to I don't know, find opportunities to start a business, to help certain groups of people. But we all kind of believe that inherently people are good. It's just the circumstances that are kind of boxing people up. But yeah, it's quite encouraging still to see that regardless, we still see all walks of life within our volunteer community, and even the indigenous people and all the low income groups that we work with. We create channels where they are able to get involved quite deeply into the project as well. So we believe that with that involvement, people can gain ownership over the different projects that we do as well.
So it's fascinating that not only do you personally have a core belief that people are looking to create some sort of impact, like from an organizational level and from a sort of systemic point of view, you guys are providing avenues for people to actually channel that desire into something more tangible. And as a result of that, like you have, I would say like almost quantitative data that people are actually looking to create an impact, and that channel, even with the circumstances of everyone being boxed up, like people are looking to use that channel as well as other channels that are available to them as well. So Pawani, how about you? Like, what's your take on this?
I think Virapol and Rachel have on this question in terms of, uh, I mean, obviously they're right on their part that, everybody wants to do good. I'll probably talk more critically about this answer, and people might not like it. Uh,
Oh no, we love diversity. And
no, I mean the other viewers on YouTube, especially my fellow Indians. So, being from India and being from a tier three city, there are a couple of challenges that I feel in terms of ordinary people participating in change. Number one is definitely there is ignorance uh, in in terms of certain issues, where people don't even think of them as an issue. So if you don't think of it as an issue, you can't really work towards it as an issue. For example, a lot of people live in a complete disbelief of the fact that women's rights are hampered, that we have an equality issue and we are in a patriarchal society. And you come to India and you talk about how India is a patriarchal society, women are not safe, and people will be like, oh, what are you saying, women are doing everything, women are going to Mars. I'm like, that's not the point. Similarly, so I mean, a lot of people, just how Donald Trump is in disbelief of the fact that climate crisis exists, there are a lot of people in India who are in sheer ignorance of a lot of small big issues. um, and therefore the first problem that becomes is actually creating awareness. In India, we're still at the creating awareness stage, so for everything we need to create awareness first, that this is an issue, that this exists. So that's one. Second challenge that I see is that there is a lot of lack of leadership in youth, uh, because everybody is very very career oriented. There is a very stereotypical or cliched journey to successful careers. So you do this, you do this, you do this, and then by 40 you are doing this and you're earning so much. And obviously everybody wants to have that lifestyle and earn that much money and all of that. But in that entire process, you don't really take out the leader in you or work for community. So it's completely focused on self. It is completely focused, this approach where how much I'm scoring, which college I am going to, which where my parents are. So I feel that in general the community approach is missing, and which is actually very sad, because India, as a country, as a community, we have been very uh, uh, open. Like, we've been a very community oriented country, right? And then seeing how today's youth especially is completely focused on the self is a little demotivating for me. And because of which there's no need to have those leadership skills also that might be required to bring about the impact. So which is why even after, so today when we actually meet youth who might be interested to an extent to create some sort of impact, and then we tell them that, like I said, I always let people do things, and then I'm the one who is there to fall back to. So I never try to influence people with my ideas that, this is what you should do, this is what you should do. So if somebody says that I want to create impact, I'll be like, what do you believe in? And they'll be like, okay, I believe in so and so. Okay, so then I'll be like, okay, go and take the lead on this and do it. And then the next thing you know, you never hear back from them. So the lead is taking the lead in something is, I think, a major uh, I mean, to a lot of people also, it is something that can be learned. It is not something that cannot be learned. And I really see that leadership being missing in most youth. So even for people who want to create change, that leadership's really missing. And the third thing that I feel is that all of a sudden social change or creating impact has become something that you want to do for your social image and your public reputation, especially with a lot of international conferences happening, funded programs happening, and because of the diversity quota that exists in good organizations and good universities, everybody wants to have that diversity on their resume. And which has really cleared a blurred line between the intent, the real intent that was to be, and what you end up doing it for. Um, uh, and somewhere what happens because of that is you don't really see people completely devoted to the cause, right? So if they're working with a particular organization, let's say that works in climate change, so they'll come there, they'll do their job, they'll finish their 2 months internship, but back when they go home, they're still using those plastic bottles and throwing them out of the window, you know so I mean, it is a real skill to be able to see through it, that what is this kind of person, is this person doing this to be a part of this community, to build their resume, to be a part of the conferences, or is it something that they really want to do? Are they making those real little conscious efforts to their lifestyle for this particular cause? um, so yeah, I think these are the three major challenges that I see around me, especially in the youth. Ignorance, one, towards issues. Second is a lack of leadership, and third is the real intent of doing things. And because if there is a real intent, you will put in conscious efforts even in your day to day life. So yeah, Ishad, that sums it up for me.
Yeah, and thanks so much for summarizing it at the end as well. And I will say that like it is to a large degree like a very valid point of view that is not just necessarily just limited to India, I would say. Like the whole concept of there being entrenched perceptions as well as like ignorance on different issues is something that regardless of uh, where you go around the world, like there are going to be people that may not even realize, or a little bit more darkly, like may not even care that there might be a problem. And once that problem of ignorance has been overcome, there's still a bunch of other things that people need to be aware of, in the sense of there is a certain degree of effort and I would say they do need to put in something in order to not just be able to provide leadership within this space, but also to make sure that at the very least they're able to continue going within this space, and trying to do that while avoiding the pitfall of using it as a platform for image and reputation, and not really seeing it as something that they like intend to actually dedicate like their life to, or not even their life, but like dedicating themselves to. Like it's something that they like people should be aware of. And although yes, it is equally valid, like from the past two speakers, that people out there are looking to create an impact. It might be different, the circumstances may be difficult, there are a bunch of things to actually navigate around, but there are also a bunch of other pitfalls that we should be mindful of when thinking about like how ordinary people might be able to create impact in the long run.
I think what's important is that we need to make sure that even if there's 2 out of 10 people who actually legitimately want to create impact, there is a platform for them, or there is
Mm,
somebody to go to or somebody to look up to for them. And I think that responsibility somewhat falls onto us as being early change makers at like comparatively. So
mm,
and which is the reason why I started the Global Shapers community in Mathura.
mm,
I was really not sure if anybody would join it. I was like, there are barely a couple of people here because we're already such a small city, and there are barely a couple of people here who would even have an idea of what we're trying to do, what is a community for that matter. um,
mm.
and realizing that it is a slow journey and it is going to take a lot of time to build the community that I'm actually trying to envision, but slowly and steadily kind of moving towards it. And I see a lot of change makers around the world doing it, not giving up the hope that one day we'll be joined in with more people like us. That's
Well,
beautiful.
I had no idea that you were the founding curator for the chapter in your.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
I'm actually going to go on to like the second last question that is sort of related to some of the things that you just mentioned. So I would say that yes, it is important for the 2 out of 10 people who do want to make a difference to actually have a proper platform to do so. I do want to dig into what your perceptions are uh, about what are some of these matters of urgency that you personally would like to see more ordinary people stepping up to create an impact. It can be within your own country, it can be a global thing, or anything in between. I mean, even smaller than country scale, like if it's a community scale thing, that's fine too.
So in my country particularly, I think cleanliness is
Mm,
one thing that I really want more people to start, because also I believe that this is something where an ordinary people can contribute very easily, with very, very little changes in lifestyle patterns. And I say cleanliness because it's very easy to understand as a word. When you say climate change and all, everybody might not understand. But
mm.
ultimately, even when you start living a life that is more cleaner and more sustainable, you ultimately end up being more conscious of the climate. So I mean, I just have one thing I've to everybody who's going to watch this in India: just cleanliness. Please don't throw things around, because
So you got cut off a little bit there, but I think the main point that you were pushing across is that cleanliness is really the precursor to number one, like having a country that's cleaner, but also like is the precursor to be able to impact other things later on. Yep.
right. Yes.
So Rachel, like what about you guys? Rachel, I see that you're unmuted already. You want to go first?
Oh, I'm just unmuted because I'm on my phone, so I don't want to keep like unmuting. Yeah, I think one thing that, even though I'm not in the sector, but I believe um, the education sector really needs some level of revamp of asking the right questions. So now how the education sector is set up is in a way where it's very career driven, like what Bhavani was talking about before. Everyone's striving to get the good grades. Everyone's striving to get the good career, climb up the career path ladder. But what we forgot to ask the kids or to train the kids in is actually what do they care about and what is the purpose they hope to see in their life.
Mhm.
So I think when people start to gear their journey towards something that is more value driven, value, I don't mean money, value, I mean contributor towards the earth ecosystem, whether it's community or environment, but to actually start asking questions towards the younger generations, because I believe older generations still can convince, but very difficult because a lot of us are already quite set in our ways. So it's trying to challenge the education system and how we teach kids to actually find purpose and value towards the next stages in their life, as compared to very career driven, very top down. I tell you to study this, so please study this and get all the climb the ladder and earn all the money. When we start teaching how to create value and to pursue purpose, I believe ordinary people will slowly start to change minds, because where the ordinary people are, everyone has to go through the school system. So where it should begin, it should be actually in the kindergarten, primary school, secondary schools already, where this foundation should be set, so that more people, when they go out after school or in their daily lives as ordinary people, they're able to find a lot more value and contribute a lot more value and bring more purpose towards themselves and to the people around them as well.
So basically, like something that's of urgency is the education system and trying to make it go beyond just the road. Like you do this in order to get to this place where you can continue to do a thing and get to another place. And basically,
I think going, yeah, sorry.
No, sorry.
I
I
think
think I
going a
interrupted.
bit more, it might be going a little bit more into philosophy.
No,
Kind
go
of
ahead. Go
asking
ahead.
more, kind of asking. Now we are kind of spoon fed everything. We're kind of like given everything. 2 + 2 = 4. Everything is very standard and straightforward. We don't do a lot of critical thinking anymore in schools. Everything is digested, memorized, and then vomited out during exams. But there's no. I mean, there are education systems out there that do start to teach kids differently. But I think one major thing is critical thinking and being able to question whatever, question the system, question how things are done, question why they're even studying math, or question history. There isn't that ability to train critical thinking and to start developing this kind of mindsets that go out into the world that contribute back towards the country. So I think going back into education, early education, and kind of changing the way, not even changing the way, or maybe even adding more syllables that support this kind of thinking.
It's fascinating because like Pawani's answer was basically something that's pretty upstream, and you basically taken it even more upstream. And I was wondering, like, so you are in the education sector. I was wondering whether you have like an alternative point of view with regards to what's the most urgent. Like, is it also education, or is there something in the back of your mind that you feel is even more urgent and potentially even more upstream?
Yeah, so I was thinking about a lot of things, and education is one of them.
Oh no.
But talking about the urgency that in Thailand, I would say that it is very complex. So I would think about the COVID situation, and so somehow, luckily in Thailand, the situation is not that bad. But however, we rely on a lot of tourism industry. So we don't have much of like tourists come from like foreign countries. So the economic is starting to get like worse. And so I think one of the urgent matter is about job creation or job promotion to ensure that people still have like money to make ends meet. But talking about the employment, I would say that it also comes back to education as well. And it also comes back to one of the main challenges in social issue in Thailand is about like equality and about equity. So I think that my main point is about promoting equal access to like resources, and like just as Pawani mentioned, that we should promote like the channel or the platform for the youth for the youth or for people to engage in like social development things. So I think it is very complex, and if to point out a few issues, it's about like job creation, is about like ensuring that people have access to resources and to solve like both short-term and long-term challenges for the social issues. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that like one of the things that's really very urgent that does underlie a lot of other issues downstream is that of like employment, equal access to opportunities, equal access to information, and that's something that quite frankly like you actually do have a part to play in being able to address lah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wasn't checking the Q&A tab, but it does seem that there is one question that the audience was asking pretty long ago. I think I should have asked this just now. But anyway, so the question kind of goes, I would open this like to all three of you. How would you approach balancing existing beliefs, either within the community or within the community that you work with, that may be limiting versus introducing new beliefs that may be beneficial but foreign? So, for example, the example that's given in this question is that a community might believe that rainwater is bad, but there's a clear need for water, and rainwater is actually the most feasible solution. Or maybe to bring in a point that Pawani was talking about just now, the whole concept of gender equality within certain places within India, it being an issue and it being like a very culturally ingrained challenge that is not very easy to break down, and by extension not very easy to address. So I was wondering whether, and I think whoever has an answer to this, like you can maybe take a shot at it, but generally, like how do you approach balancing like the community wisdom that you do actually take into heavy consideration, while also taking into account like certain issues that do need to be solved but is foreign to that community?
So,
Actually, sorry.
Pawani, you want to go
Please
first?
go.
You can go.
I
You can
don't
go
have a
second.
very long answer. I'll just wrap it up quickly. So, I think for what works for me is creating and showing people an MVP, a minimum viable product of that particular solution that you're talking
Nice.
about. Because sometimes, no matter how much you talk about a particular solution, until you really show it and lead by example, you're not going to really create a dent in any kind of a cultural belief. So please create an MVP whenever you have any such conflicting beliefs. Create an MVP of the solution and show it. That works the best.
Hmm. And it's interesting because like that actually brings in a whole bunch of senses into the equation, like sight, touch, and like rather than trying to break down an argument, you just
Exactly.
show it to them and like, oh.
And a lot of times, the only question that you need to answer whenever there is a conflict in regards with trying new things is, what do you have to lose?
Mm.
What is the worst that can happen? And the MVP answers that question for you. And once you've answered that, this is the worst, nothing bad can happen than this, then that is when people start to accept new beliefs. So
Interesting. So basically questioning what they have to lose. What's your take on this?
Yeah, sure. I actually agree with Pavani, and also to add on something, I think that it's about co-creation. So in education sector, I would say that it's about the school curriculum or the school identity. So when we go out to the school level, not the national level, we will first try to learn from their best, and also involve them to engage them like to co-create the vision together about like what are we going and what are we going to change in order to achieve that goal, something like that. So I think that by engaging them in the process of the change, we will make them like lower their guard and lower their resistance. And also, just as Pavani mentioned, by showing them like what the final product will look like, will like smooth their mind and ease their mind, something like that. So I think that these are like the ways to ensure like cooperation.
Okay, cool. So what I'm hearing is that, so in addition to like the whole MVP concept, like there is an element where you can get buy-in through participation, and integrating the MVP into like that process actually does kind of create buy-in on an exponential level, I would say. So Rachel, do you want to chime in, or is everything kind of covered?
Yeah, I
Sure.
think the question really resonates a lot with me, and also I'm sure with my team as well, because we struggle with this all the time. Being a community developer, being someone who goes in first as a community engager and being unbiased, actually personally, yeah, I struggle with trying to introduce new things because it's not what is to the extent it's not what they want. It's not what they say they want at all. Sometimes they even flat out just say like, no, I'm not interested. As an unbiased person, how do you juggle saying, oh no, but it's good for you, for someone who is not supposed to be imposing any additional or any external things lah. So I think I also resonate a lot with what we were saying about co-creation, co-designing, and actually hand-holding people from the beginning to the end, meaning from the start, setting out objectives together, setting out the foundation, setting out the tone. Are we going into this co-design already with set ideas on what we hope to achieve at the end, or are we going to allow an open discussion, allowing for better ideas to be created? So I think with that, setting the foundation right from the start with the community or with the client, we are able to then always lean back towards that open direction, where we are allowed to then explore more creative means to achieve the same objective. And of course, again, what both we and Pawani was talking about is the creating an MVP, finding a client community or something that is willing to adopt the idea and using that as a case study for following upcoming people who may want to adopt it as well.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think interestingly, like across the board, like the common threads are introducing some level of participation, while at the same time introducing some degree of tangibility to what you want to introduce, so that people can better resonate with it. And if you guys don't mind, like my own perspective on this is that there are certainly going to be some systemic or cultural problems that are going to be challenging to navigate, but for the vast majority of things that go on within different communities, like all the things that you've mentioned, like are super effective. And it just, one of the things that I've learned as a result of working with you for a while is that people are afraid because they are afraid that that MVP might fail. And I would recommend for anyone who's listening to this to actually go out and try and actually build it, introduce it, and try to co-create it with the people that you want to work with and impact. Yeah, just wanted to add that 2 cents of my own. So
yeah,
you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just to add like a few more things, like so in addition, I think that to focus on the problem is another way of getting buy-in. Like we are not going there and offer like the package or the product or the solution by the first time. But instead we try to focus on the pain points on the problem and have the conversation, have to navigate like, so this is your problem and this is the root causes. So what do you think, to change or not to change? And if you want to change, we just, as Rachel mentioned, we hold hand together and try to brainstorm about like the possible ways to overcome the changes. And then just as Pavani mentioned, we can have the MVP to ensure that, and just as you mentioned earlier, to test it and to ensure the people that this will work. Or if it doesn't work, we know that this one doesn't work. So we will find another way to work around it until we find a better solution, something like that. So I think that to focus on the pain point is also like one way to gain buy-in.
Thanks so much for sharing that.
I just wanted to add a little bit on what we was talking about finding the pain points. Actually, a lot of times, for example, just now mentioning rainwater harvesting, For us, it's very straightforward. Rainwater harvesting is good, but we don't actually see a lot of other things that go about rainwater harvesting. And we may not be aware of a lot of the pain points. For example, rainwater harvesting is great in the city, but if you do it in the rural areas, you have problem with being clogged. You have trees all over the place. You'll clog up rainwater harvesting. Animals will go in there, and etc. etc. We are not aware of that at all. So I think that making sure that we understand the whole picture before we also kind of just do an MVP. We have to ensure that we address or acknowledge and work together to create not just a rainwater harvesting system, but a rainwater harvesting system that's suitable for that particular community and the challenges that they're facing as well. So sometimes maybe sustainability, maybe maintenance for rainwater, maybe the community is not a very cooperative community. You may have the rainwater harvesting today, but in like next year, it will be totally unused. So it's kind of like mapping all this out even before thinking about, okay, rainwater harvesting is great, let's introduce it,
My last comment, or maybe like suggestion to the question, is that it may not just about the problem solving process, but it's also like the decision making process or the stakeholder engagement. So if you can find like the one that have like the voice over the decision making process, and their concerns, and like how to like get their buy-in, I think that also can contribute to a successful transition.
See, this is why I love talking to people who have clearly thought about this for a very, very long time. And I'm going to close this session by asking, I think for all intents and purposes, a related question. And this question actually invites you to share with the audience whether there are any frameworks, books, research papers, podcasts, or anything that has either formed the way that you think on a very fundamental level, or even something that has that has caught your attention in very recent times. So like if there's anything that you want to share with the audience, like this would be the time.
Wow. For me, honestly, I don't have one direct source to say like, go and read this book or go and find this
it can be a few
person
books.
and you have yeah. So for me personally, it's actually talking to a lot of people. So through my journey, I have been given the great opportunity to actually meet a lot of really amazing people and talk to all sorts of people that you never thought would be in line with what you're doing as well. You could learn a lot from them. So for me, it's actually meeting all of these people and actually talking to the people who are on the opposite spectrum of what you are doing, people who actually disagree with you, people who criticize you, and people who kind of don't believe in what you do. I believe that we should open conversations with the opposite side of the spectrum, just to learn more and to equip yourself more, and also to change your mindset towards certain things, because sometimes we are so set in our ways as well. Even though we think we are very open-minded, we may not be as open-minded as we think. And so by talking to people on the opposite spectrum really helps you either build your foundation or rethink a lot of things that you're doing as well. So that would be my kind of 2 cents. And also, I guess IDEO, being in co-creation and co-design, everyone knows IDEO, and IDEO has been quite an inspiration to a lot of things that we do as well. So you can check them out.
I mean, interestingly, like the first part of your question and the second part of your question, response, sorry, like it's in some way the same, because IDEO does actually encourage people to talk to the stakeholders and like talk to a whole bunch of different people. Anyway, so yeah, so for anyone who's looking for like okay, so beyond talking to people, where do I actually go to read? Like IDEO is a pretty good organization. They have a whole bunch of resources. Thanks so much for sharing that. I see that you are unmuted. Ready to go.
Yeah. So I really agree with Rachel. So going out to meet the people, and so if you run an organization, I think that talking to your co-founders is one of the best way to have ideas and have like encouragement to do forward. And also the second thing, maybe like going to your like industry forum, something like that, to see like what are the other people talking about right now. And maybe something else, if you mentioned about the book, I would recommend like the testing business ideas from the theory of the from the business model canvas series. I think that one emphasizes on like the hypothesis testing. So it will encourage you to go out and test your ideas with your prospect client, something like that. So you will have like a lot of tools and a lot of like ways to do it.
Understand. So basically, like one thing that I'm hearing is that like talking to people is super important to a large degree, like not just social entrepreneurs, but also like every ordinary person is going to end up in some industry, and being able to come together within the context of an industry and actually hearing what other people think is also a very good way to uncover some of the challenges. And the business model canvas like is always can never go wrong with that. All right, Pawani, so why don't you close up this session by talking a little bit about where people should go, what people should be reading, listening to, or talking to even. I think you're muted. Yeah.
I think people should definitely be listening to OPAI talks. And apart from that, try to find out local non-profits. So even for people who are based in small cities, there are definitely a lot of local non-profits that you can join. There are a lot of times when I get random requests of people from schools and colleges that they want to intern with us, work with us. But then when I actually tell them to come and show up at the office, and they never do, then there's like, okay, we'll come some other day, some other time. So I think if you really want to create some kind of an impact, you will have to move it. You'll have to put in efforts and go show up at that office. I mean, to be very honest, I did not listen a lot of things or read a lot of things. I am a more action oriented person, and that's the same advice that I would give to anybody out there. Experiences are the best teachers. However, now obviously I listen to people, wonderful people like you guys, and I read a lot. But the first step is to actually start to be involved in the actual action. And even if you're somebody who believes that you can change the world through education, you can start by teaching one person. Charity can start at home, but that action is important, because that's ultimately where you're going to get the motivation from, and not by listening to people or talking to people.
Yeah, and that's fascinating, because as someone who's been so deeply entrenched within the social sustainable change ecosystem for so long, it's often very easy to forget that sometimes showing up, being there, and like just learning from experience is pretty much the bedrock and the precursor for where other things can actually happen. And like that was a very timely reminder. I'll be very
also
honest.
the only thing that really keeps you going in the social sector is seeing the impact, is listening to the stories of people who you're impacting, and that cannot happen by listening to people like us. For that, you'll actually have to go out and meet those people, and that is what will keep you going. So do that.
Yeah, like quite honestly. Oh yeah, Rachel, go ahead.
About personal, well, I guess a kind of a personal story is that I am a very OCD person, meaning I want to make sure that everything is well thought out, everything is set in place, all the questions, all the doubts are answered before I even take the first step. And I would say that to anybody who wants to create impact, do not do that. I really resonate with what Pawani was saying. It's something that I learned along the way as well, is that don't be afraid to start small. Don't be afraid to start at the bottom. Don't be afraid to go out there to test, because I think there are a few types of people out there, people who want to create large impact immediately. I would say to just start small first, and don't worry so much about creating large impact if you haven't even started. So to start small, to start from ground, kind of get down and dirty with people who are already doing it and learn from these people. and kind of jump around or learn from a variety of people who are already successful at what they do. And then only then you start mapping out your own journey. Maybe you may even have pivoted your own journey from there, from learning the harsh realities of life. But yeah, I totally agree with Pawani about at least taking the first step, because I think there are opportunities that you miss because you are planning too much and you're worried too much.
I want to say one thing. I don't know why do I always do this at the end of any session, but my name is actually Pavni and not
Pavani.
Pavani.
Oh, sorry.
Pavani.
I
am
am so used
sorry.
to it now. I am so used to it now that even I don't bother.
Pavani, I'm so sorry for
Okay.
mispronouncing the name, like the entire
It's
talk. I'm so sorry.
It's completely okay. And I also get so involved in the conversation that the name is the last thing that clicks me. I'm always thinking about the question. It's okay.
I should have been more mindful of that, because I also do have my own name mispronounced as well. So
It's
anyway,
completely okay.
so
Whatever.
okay, so with that, honestly, like, this is the longest talk that we've had so far. Like, thanks so much, you guys, for taking the time to do this. I'll hand the time back to Vandri, who's going to close the session.
Okay, so
Why are
thank
you
you.
in so much dark?
Yeah, why
Yeah.
are you in darkness?
Little bit. Okay, hello all, and thank you everyone for the time, for the speakers, and also for our lovely moderator that already moderate the 5th session of Ordinary People Achieving Impact webinars. And we also already have the next session of OPAI that we will share to you guys. It will be in Saturday for this session. In this 2 weeks, it will be around, let me check the calendar first, because yeah, a little bit forget about the days. It will be in 26th of September 2020, and the poster will be up next week. So for any attendees that want to join us again, please make sure that the session will be changed for the date. And thank you so much for your time. And this OPAI session is also brought to you by Robert Bosch alumni, and also it's came from with the AAC Berlin. And thank you everyone, and have a good night.